Welcome to Stories and Stanza. I am your host Obro. I am a poet and I created this podcast to bring you a montage of real stories that make life beautiful as poetry. Some stories are my own and some are from the wonderful people who have chosen to join me as guests and bring their incredible journey. Stories include a creator's passion or unfolding branches of human emotions in the face of failure or unfamiliar chapters from the past that remind us about the richness and vastness of life. Embark on a voyage of exploration, contemplation, and motivation with me. Please join me in welcoming today's guest speaker. Hi, Steve. Thanks for joining this new episode of Stories and Stanza. Thank you for making the time. So, can you please give a brief intro about yourself?
Certainly, and thank you very much for having me. My name is Steve, or Stephen. I'm a writer and business person. I'm 44 and live in London.
Thanks, Steve. So, I created this podcast to talk about the journey of people. So, I know a lot of writer friends, and I find that everyone's journey is very unique. Their experience enrich me, and I thought that if I create a place where people can come and share their stories and maybe something they have written, some challenges they have faced, that would be uh, maybe helpful to others, maybe inspiring for others. And so we'll talk about your inspirations, your writing journey, and all of that. But before we begin, would you like to read something? I know we have talked about this, and I've listened to this poem already, but I'm excited for everyone else to hear that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have already covered this one, but yeah, I'll try and give it a good performance for you. Okay, so it's called Women. Okay, I shall start now. In shallow footsteps we tread, defying shackles we sail. In cloak or beauty we fly, familiar journeys we embrace. Uncharted adventures we excavate, hands cleansed in passion we bathe, under shelter we give, consumed in empathy we are grace, armed at the table or spectator we write, adrift in storm we weather, through dark shroud we are light, burdened by pain we are brave, in need we save, we are everything who we choose, we decide who wins and who we lose. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That was a beautiful poem. And I would you like to talk about the thoughts behind this poem? So, how you believe in equality, and I thought that would be a good starting point of our chat today.
Oh, brilliant. That is a great place to start. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. So the poem Women, it's about equality, and in this instance, gender equality. It's inspired by the women in my life and many stories of courage. As an example, would be the story of Tracy Edwards and the Maiden Crew, the first all-female crew to compete in the Whitbread round the world yacht race. That's the documentary I saw on Netflix. And in a broader sense, I firmly believe in equality for all. As an example, I don't think it's fair a woman might have to behave differently to get the same professional opportunities, or someone has to hide their sexual orientation. A person suffers persecution because of ethnicity. At the end of the day, equality is simply the right thing to do. And it might help the world be just a little bit better. You
that
never know.
that is
So
so
that's
true.
what's behind the poem.
That is so true,
Yeah.
and so important for everyone to understand in today's world. And thank you for sharing the poem. And I believe that the more creatives write about these things, that is like a social footprint that this is being written, this voice is out there, and maybe gradually that will bring the change the world needs. So
Yeah, I think it all contributes.
I really like the poem. So
Thank you.
getting more about your creativity. Would you like to tell me something about your writing process and how you came to writing? You told me about your father's passing, and you uh, kind of got inspired by that, and it's a very similar personal story for me as well. So I would like to know more about it.
Certainly. So the writing process with me is usually something inspires me. And from there, the words usually fall on a page. I don't often spend a lot of time thinking about it. I prefer to get the emotions on the paper as opposed to trying to rationalize it too much. I wrote a poem this morning actually, which I'll thank you. I'll get a chance to read later,
Hmm.
and it was literally written in 90 seconds, just by taking the emotions that I was feeling and trying to put them on the page and create the imagery. In terms of writing, I used to write when I was younger, and we'll probably cover this a bit more later. But I fell away from it, and I 20 well, over a quarter of a century passed before I wrote. And my father passed away a couple of years ago during the pandemic, and his funeral was approaching, and I thought he would like me to write a poem for him and read it at his funeral. So I did, and I guess the emotions of that time put a door ajar and probably made me access things I hadn't felt for a very long time. And from there, writing grew. I I also have a very dear friend who's an artist, and I was looking at her work one day, and she was showing me her work, and I thought, well, how can I be a better friend? How can I try and relate to the? This was after my father passed away. How can I relate to the creative process? So I I continued writing, certainly fueled by the grief from the passing of my father, and I then went on a creative writing course, and it's fiction. Every piece I submitted seemed to have a piece of poetry in it, whether it was appropriate or not. And and after that, I continued writing, and then not. And probably about 6 months after the course completed, I wrote Women,
Hmm.
and my artist friend again approached me not so long ago and spoke about projects that she's working on, and would I consider uh, I'd say being maybe supportive. I don't want to say a collaborator because I'm definitely not that. And I thought, well, what do I have to offer besides, business experience? And I thought, well, I write. So I then was determined to improve my writing. And from there, I landed on using social media, asking people for feedback. And it's just moved on from there, really. I've had a magazine reach out to me. So they're publishing a couple of my poems. One's just been published and is going into paperback as we speak. I've done open mic nights. And I suppose what I've found through this whole process is the creativity builds. It doesn't stay stagnant. And the more fuel you put in, the bigger the fire gets. And a bigger array of subjects you find, what I find I want to talk about or I want to express. And I suppose the next step for me is probably writing longer fiction pieces. And I'm trying to settle on something at the moment. So I think that probably covers that. I'm not sure if you have any further questions on that point.
Yes, I wanted to talk about, like, how do you feel about being a writer in today's world? Why I'm asking that is, I go to social media and see a lot of people saying, "Oh, I have written, like, 15,000 words in 2 days." Or they are very goal oriented, and they're doing this, have to do this, and it honestly scares me because um,
You and me both.
so I'm not that disciplined, or I don't have that much of time to devote behind writing. So how do you do that? Like, if you can share anything around that.
Okay, I mean, I think first things first, I always have seen and do see now writers as a reflection of the time we're in. And I think writing from the heart and putting that on the page is the most important thing. And I think where social media in particular has impacted things and algorithms behind it
Hmm.
that drive popularity, etc., have maybe not fan the flame of creativity, it's fan the flame of popularity and commercialism.
Yes.
And there's a balance to be had. I mean, I understand that professional writers need to earn a living. That's something that needs to be considered. But at its essence, I always hope that writing is about creativity. It's from the heart. It expresses what we're living through in these times, and maybe even creates a shared consciousness between the writer and the reader.
Yeah.
That's what I hope for.
Yes. That. Thank you for saying that. That definitely resonates with me. That that concerns like it's building something together, building sort of a bridge between the writer and the reader, and it's definitely uh, creativity of our time. Uh, uh, so you mentioned earlier that you write something which comes to you very quickly, like you wrote a 90-second piece and then you kept that. So uh, does it change for you? Like for example, if do you do things like it keep in your draft and then revisit it, or do you think that if you have written something, you go with that particular moment?
It's a mixture. I'd say most of the time I go with it in the moment. Try not to overthink it. Try not to edit it, unless there's some major grammatical errors, in which case it's probably best to. But in general, I go with the flow and just put it out there while I'm in the moment. Some pieces I spend more time on. I think now I've started performing poetry, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. So I'm writing longer pieces and then I'm editing them to maybe post on social media if it's appropriate. So I'm seeing it differently, and I think also the bigger the piece, the more words that are there, then the more time I will spend on it, and then the more I'll spend time editing it as well to try and ensure I get across the point I'm trying to make, or deliver the message or the imagery, and trying to make it more cohesive.
Mm.
For me, writing a poem, the words just tend to fall on the page pretty quickly. But something that's more expansive, I think by nature takes more work. So I do have things in my draft that I haven't posted that have gone back months probably.
Yeah.
And I'll also consider where people, the people that are dear to me, where they are in their lives, because they'll always be nice usually and read it. Um, and I wouldn't want to send them something that's provocative and upsetting. So, and sometimes our shared experiences, they are shared and they entwine a bit, they're similar. And I think it's important to be conscious of not hurting someone. On my creative writing course, they said, no, you've just got to put everything out there and not worry about the effects. And I
Right.
thought, that's counterintuitive to who I am as a person. So I decided to not do that, take that approach.
Right. I have a question here. So, I mean, when I follow writers in social media, I generally notice that they are very, in some cases, not always, like they are very genre driven. That I'm writing, I'm going to only write about this particular genre. I'm not going to interact with anybody else. Say, someone is writing love stories, someone is writing uh, say mental health, or somebody is writing about some
Mm.
fantasy domains and things like that. So they always think that, oh, this is my uh, vertical and I'm going to stick to that, I'm not going to explore anything. uh, do you feel what do you feel about that in general? I'm asking because I have never been able to narrow down myself to any particular area. I mean, I want to write fiction someday, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of horses for courses, really. And again, maybe it ties back to also wearing your heart on your sleeve and what's in the moment, and also commerciality.
Hmm.
And I think commerciality will drive someone to be typecast, say, in a movie or
Hmm.
a TV program. And maybe it's the same for writers. I think if every writer sat down and wrote what was on their mind or what they felt in their heart, it would probably cover all manner of subjects. But maybe you get trapped into things. Um, I suppose Stephen King's a great example of horror movies, or horror
Yes.
writing. Yeah. So maybe he has. I mean, if you watch Shawshank Redemption, maybe that is born out horror. It's born out horror of prison, but it has different themes to it and it's handled differently. So I guess there's always that desire for expression, and the same for musicians. You can see how musicians, particularly in certain decades, get trapped into certain types of music, but there's always that desire for expansion and difference. It's just, I suppose, the record label goes, no, no, that's what sells, and we've got bills to pay. So maybe the answer is as simple as commerciality.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I'm not so much after numbers at all especially in this podcast. It's more about like helping, maybe inspiring people. So on that
Mm.
note, I'd like to understand or hear from you as to some of the challenges you might have faced, and if that assisted in your writing, or it was something that you had to overcome to be a better writer. You want to talk about that?
Certainly, of course. So I used to write a lot as a child and as an early teenager, and I was um, brought to one side by my teachers and asked to develop my writing skills with the view to go to higher education, university, study English literature. But one of the reasons I had to put my effort in is I'm dyslexic and I'm letterblind. So obviously, as a writer, being letterblind is a challenge. Um, and I would say that one of the reasons I stopped writing was because of that, because it was so much hard work, and it just felt like a block. I could, what was in my mind, I knew what I wanted to say, but I could not put it on paper, and it's difficulty reading as well. So everything's slower. But with the aid of technology and also life experience and hard work, I would not say I've overcome it by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's constant work, but it's worthwhile. And I know I need to take more time out to work on anything that requires reading and writing,
Hmm.
and I need to make the space for it, and I need to ensure I treat it with respect. And if I do that, I can get a lot more out of it. And again, it goes back to when my father passed, was probably the initial fuel to rediscover it and apply myself. That and the projects that my dear friend works on as well was inspiration to do that. So it can be done. It just, I think, depending on the severity of dyslexia, the type of dyslexia you have, and your life and everything that's going on, because we're all busy. If you've got the time to dedicate to writing your dyslexic, you certainly can do it. I'm sure there's probably quite successful authors out there that are dyslexic. So, not that
Yes.
I know of any.
Yeah. Yes. And that's a very interesting point of view. And I'm sure that you coming and talking about it would probably have questions from people, and they would want to know more and explore more, and that's the idea behind documenting such journeys. uh, I
It might
wanted
also
to
explain some of my grammatical errors.
yes, I wanted to bring up the topic of mental health, because there are two sides of it. From what I have observed, is that some cases we see that someone has a mental health problem, but they are able to channel that into creativity or use creativity to come out of it. That's one way of it. And then sometimes they are like so uh, so we cannot let me rephrase that question. I mean, when we write, do we address mental health in a better way because it's a creative outlet, or you think that if there are mental health problems, then that can be uh, channeled into writing?
It's a very interesting topic, this. And I think it's also important to say that not all mental health issues are, that they're very individual and individual to the person. In terms of writing and how mental health can, I suppose, in some ways drive writing and writing can help, I definitely think there's something there. I think it can be a good release. I think it can help organize your thoughts. I think it can project feelings out that you're not sure that you have, maybe even as journaling. I think it's important not to get stuck into a loop with it.
Mm.
And it's important to also seek advice. But
Yes.
I think writing can be beneficial and a very good release and help you rationalize what's going on with yourself in your life and the people around you. And we've all just been through quite a traumatic experience of a pandemic. So maybe it's beneficial to some people and can help.
Yes. Thank you for that. I guess that's a topic that we can possibly go on and, like, unpick that in different layers, and I certainly intend to do that as I interact with more writers, know about their creativity and so forth. Another,
Definitely. And I also
yeah.
think, also, I was also going to say, and I think it's interesting to get a point of view of a mental health professional as well and see what their thoughts are on it.
Yes, yes. So I have recorded another episode today morning, and it's a very interesting title. So we are calling it "Fail with Me," and in that we are trying to unpick failure and certain things about human behavior. So there are that's another side of the podcast that I want to bring in, as in. Some of these aspects that we generally see get confused about, how to resolve that and uh, tie that back to creativity. So if you want, please feel free to check that out. uh, Another aspect about the challenges I want to ask is, like, being an author, being a writer is changing a lot, and now a lot of writers are like self-serviced, and they self-published authors, and what they tell me that it uh, takes the creativity away from them. It's very hard to market their own work, and they hate it, but should they do it or should they not? So they kind of get caught up in that dilemma, and I have been thinking about it myself, and I feel shy that, oh, okay, I've written a book, please look at it. uh, doing that. So would you what opinion would you have on this matter?
Okay, I mean, I think for a writer and an artist that feels compelled to put their words out there, self-publishing is a great route. I can understand the commercial aspects of a business. It it can outweigh the creativity sometimes, and I think whatever business in, you have to market it. And it's interesting within business, you have different departments that do different things. You have the creative people, then you have the creative marketing people and the finance people. And it's hard to wear all those hats as one individual. So I would imagine that it does wear heavy trying to do it. But I think for authors, sometimes that's a good route to go down, particularly if they feel they must get their words out there, whether it's about commercial success or just the freedom of expression. So I think it's an important part of the process. I think it's important to get help with marketing and finance and to get support for that as well.
Yep.
Because as you said, it can
Yes.
be very demanding.
Yes, it can be very demanding at times. So, given that you shared a lot of things about your creative journey, and I'm sure that the listeners will find a lot of insights from it. So, if you were to give any advice or any suggestions to new writers, or maybe to yourself for future consideration, what would that be?
Right, and this is advice I give myself as well. I would say read is one of the most important things, and read as much as you can, and different influences, different tones, different textures. I would say try to read something every day. In terms of the writing itself, for me, it's right from the heart, and really try to convey your feelings about whatever subject you're writing about, and try to get that on the page. I can't ever think that's a bad thing, particularly in fiction. And I'd also say, don't be afraid. This is something, a lesson for me is don't be afraid of repetition, because I'm the sort of person that doesn't like repetition. I always like
Mm,
change and things to develop and move forward. But what I've found is write what serves the piece and the work that you're working on at that time, and not to try and change it because of something else you've written. That's something for me that I think I've learned recently. I think as a poet, perform and go out and learn how the words sound to yourself and to an audience, and how an audience reacts. And then also experience other poets performing and take inspiration from that. It changes the words completely, and you can find emotion in things that you. But I found emotion in things that I didn't think I could or would, or relate to things differently. So I'd say that's also really important as well.
yes, thank you for that. So I think I have gone through the questionnaire I had from my end. So is there any unique experience you would like to share today?
Okay, I mean, I would say I've had many experiences, I guess, that formed a life, formed part of my life that I pull on. I'd say I'm more inspired by other people. I wrote a poem about 5 o'clock this morning. I woke up quite early, which is the one I'll probably read in a minute, about feeling stuck, unable to put the words on a page, and thought about feeling stuck in life, not moving forward, and how it uh, feels when days pass us by. And I was imagining doing this on a train, and then I thought about the many seasons of traveling to the same job on a train and feeling unsatisfied, or the feelings of beholden to other forces preventing us from achieving our goals or being our authentic selves. And this all formed as I was writing the poem this morning. And I suppose rather than focusing on one unique experience, I suppose, in terms of life out there, there's loads, and we live them every single day. And there's something that we can take from all of them, particularly as writers or artists. And for me, it's hard to settle on one, because it all forms part of the same mixture that we draw from as writers. So I'm sorry, I know that's not an answer to your question, but
No,
it's probably how I
but it's
felt
unique,
about
and
how I
yeah,
feel about asking it.
that's interesting. I wanted to hear from you. So yeah, anything is fine. So yeah, and so as I told you before, like we in this podcast we're sharing stories as well as poetry. So to conclude today's discussion, would you like to read out something you have written, something that you would like to
Oh,
share?
oh, thank you very much. I will do. So the first poem I'm going to read is the one I wrote at 5 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, sure.
um, and it's about, yeah, just I suppose in the end it's about feeling stuck in life, and it actually started from me not being able to put any words on the page, so it kind of all blended together. And then the second one is about the many faces that women either choose to wear or have to wear because of way society drives them, and it draws back on the equality subject, but it's also sort of to say to the people, I suppose, that I love, that I love every facet of you, and I hope you always feel free to express yourselves and never really worry what anyone else thinks, because I think life's too short for that. So if I start with the first one, it's untitled, so I'll begin now. Pages lie empty, reaching in, hands bereft of the words I need to leave behind, the tangled and entwined. Through grey skies, light flashes in passing, waving as it finds others to tan, warm their backs, make fire where they stand. Days follow, one another in different outfits, expectant of change. Each hour lasts a lifetime, rhapsody of colour and tone. All wear the same, present in the past for future's sake. A soul cut in two, headed in the same direction on different trains. The end. Sorry, I didn't
Thank you.
read that one very well. It's a bit new.
No, it's
And
perfectly
then,
all right. Yeah.
and then the second one is every version of you. So I'll begin.
Sure.
I love the dress you're wearing, torn in white, the many faces of your life. I love this coat on you, flourishing green, stealing stars from the clutches of the silver screens. I love your trousers, black as sin, carrying the eyes and kisses of all ever seen. I love that dressing gown, soft comfort of whole, that being that only you, beauty in abundance, breathe easy, on the feather pillows resting from the kisses of your eyes. I love that skirt, satin stained, rooftops and wishes your terrain, marching through imaginations of those that dare, where you tread, never ever throw a care. The end.
Thank you. It was beautiful. So thanks for coming to the show today, Steve, and sharing your incredible journey. I'm sure it would resonate with the listeners, and maybe we'll have you back again some other time and share some more poetry.
Well, thank you ever so much for having me. It's very kind of you to invite me on, and I hopefully look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.